This is Denise Perez, and we're at 10:60 a.m. with Perez, right?
Right.
Department Z. So Romeo Perez is running for Family Court Judge, Department Z. How many more? This is an additional
This is
department?
Department Z is a new department that the legislature created last year. We are now at 26 family courts.
Wow.
So I'm looking to become the first judge in Department Z.
Well, Vegas Views has been doing these candidate interviews, and I'm learning so much because it just seems like everything is very complex these days. And you running for judge, you even brought up some things, just pre studio we were talking. What do you see as being one of the most important issues in running for family judge? Because obviously you've been working in this field for over 20 years as an attorney.
Right. So I've been a family court judge for, I'm sorry, family court attorney for
And you
over,
want to be a
I
judge.
do want to be a judge. We've been doing this for about 21 years, a little over 21 years now. And I've been helping families, serving families here in the county for that long, doing family court. I, I, I know that we've had to add now 26 family court judges because the population of Clark County is over 2 million people.
Mm,
And as much as people think, well, family court doesn't really affect me, it actually does. For us to need 26 additional family court judges apart from the civil and criminal judges, there is a huge need. And family court addresses not only divorces and child custody and child support, which is what you normally think of,
mm-hmm,
but they also handle guardianship, juvenile justice, the abuse and neglect or CPS cases.
mm-hmm.
So family court has a very broad jurisdiction, and that is mostly personal to people. That's the most personal of
Sure, your
laws that there
family,
are, sure.
family and faith. Obviously, being a Christian radio station, we always have these things on our mind regarding, our faith. And I guess if you have a family that's splitting up, and say you have two faith directives, how do you handle that as a judge? Have you come across, or how would you handle that as a judge? And have you come across these kinds of things as an attorney?
I have. It's very difficult because sometimes you've got one parent who wants to baptize, one parent who doesn't. We have sometimes parents who are separated or divorcing, and they have different beliefs. The courts do not get involved with that because that's government involvement in the religion, and
I
we
love
don't get
hearing
involved with
that.
that.
Yeah, so
The
you
families have to decide that.
yeah, so you're really respectful of that. And religious exemptions is so prevalent too on medical freedom, particularly vaccines. So you have, maybe one parent who understands the dangers and the risks involved with the vaccines and the other one that doesn't. How does the family court judge navigate that? Because obviously it's very, it's a hard subject.
Sure, and ultimately the best interest of the child is the one that's going to be protected. And
Mm-hmm.
courts should only get involved in your life when you can't make those decisions.
Good.
If the
Yes.
parents aren't able to make the decisions for themselves and their family, then the court must protect the best interest.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know that your family history has a long law practice, and can you just expound on that a little bit?
Sure, I've been practicing family law for over 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
I have also practiced in civil law with personal injury. I've done some criminal law, and I've done some traffic tickets.
Oh,
So, and I
ticket
think,
fixer.
right, exactly. Well, and the important part is the reason I think this is important to mention in running for family court is because I'm not just a family court practitioner. I've seen other areas of law. And the reason I've seen those is because as my families had other needs, I was able to help them in those needs. They trust me, and I am able to go out and help them with their cases like a DUI because DUIs are sometimes a part of a family's problem.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes domestic violence is. Sometimes they have a
Sure.
car accident or get injured. Those are cases that have just developed, and my family law practice has developed through my family clients.
Well, how would you say that your faith is going to impact you as a judge?
I've been I grew up Catholic all my life, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been very involved in my church. I'm very involved in the youth. I think they're very important. I have children. I've one. My daughter's 14.
Wow.
My son's 12, and I've always been involved with the church. I've had them grow up believing and understanding the importance of faith.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that will definitely impact my decision making, and more importantly, I think it will give me the peace that I need to make the hard decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Prayer is certainly a big part of my life, especially right now with the quarantine,
Oh yeah.
especially
How are
with
you
the
handling the quarantine with your campaign?
you know what, the campaign. There's not a lot to the campaign right now. We've got a lot of prayer right now. You know what, right now I think it's important to just focus on each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's so many people in need. There's so much need
Yes.
for helping. We were out. My family and I were out at Catholic Charities helping early on before they had their problems, but because people are still in need and the need only
Yes.
grows, and I think it's important as part of our faith to serve
Mm-hmm. So volunteering has been, just a big part of your just life in general, and
always.
now in running the campaign, family life, doing all these things. Do you ever sleep?
I do, and that's funny because we talk about service, and I think this is being a family court judge would be the next step in my service and what
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to do.
We were discussing a little bit, I'll call it glass walls, and
Hmm.
some things that you need to navigate as an attorney for families. What are some of the things you've come up with that you would kind of describe as sort of a glass wall that people don't really recognize?
I think that many times in my practice, I see people who come in and they say, I want my child to talk to the judge.
Mm.
That's the big one. And I say, no, that's not going to happen. Ordinarily, it does not happen because
Oh,
courts and the law requires that we don't involve children in these kind of
yeah. Yes.
decisions. We want to let children be children and let the adults deal with the adult problems.
Mm-hmm.
So many times people think, well, why can't they come? Or why can't I use this piece of evidence? Why can't I record my ex? Why can't I do some of these things? And as a lawyer, I know where those walls are. Sometimes people who don't who are practicing, for themselves, it's pro per, they come in and they say, well, I want to use this evidence or I want to do these things, and the court will tell them no.
Mm-hmm.
And those are glass walls that I think we like to say because you think you can walk through, but you can't.
Right.
So as much as you'd like to use something or try to do something, you can't. And,
Because
and really a lawyer is
in your
helpful.
view, it's so harmful to the child, and you see that. I mean, there's so many families who have split for whatever reason, and sometimes they're on the second or third format of that, blending all different types of families, and it just seems like it's getting more complicated instead of less complicated. But I hope that with the world we have now, that we're starting to focus more on the family
Hmm.
and the family unit and strengthening the family unit. What are some things you do in your attorney practice that strengthens the family unit?
I always tell people, and I've probably had maybe 5 divorces that we've stopped because they've reconciled.
Oh, great. I
And
love those stories.
I always recommend to people, look, have you done everything you possibly can? Whenever
Mhm.
somebody seems like they're not really on board with the divorce, they just
Mhm.
want information, my question is always, have you done everything that you could do?
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, you've got to look at your child and say, hey, I did everything I could to save this marriage, and it just wasn't going to work.
Do you think that possibly a practice that I'll call overlooking, that there's just certain things that people dwell on, that instead if they would take a position of overlooking it, it would just sort of solve the problem because then they wouldn't be focused on it?
That's why I think it's important to have a lawyer in these kind of
Mhm.
situations because when you represent yourself, you're taking all of that
It's
emotion
hard,
with
very
it.
hard.
And
Mhm.
emotion is so difficult to overcome when
Yes.
you're feeling passionate about you're being wronged. You're being,
Mhm.
that person did something terrible to me and you've destroyed. And the one you get a lot is I never would have dreamed that I would be getting a divorce.
Right.
Nobody prepares for a divorce. We all plan these weddings. We all
Right.
save money. We plan these. We dream about these
Uh-huh.
days, nobody dreams about their divorce.
Sure. I was just going to open this up to caller to if they have a question about family court. It's local call number 702-650-KKVV. That's 5588. If you want to ask, hopefully, Judge Perez, Department Z, any questions. But, do you have any cases that are really memorable for you? Any that stood out that you thought, wow, if I could avoid this or if I could be like this. Do you have one that you can think of that would be?
I've practiced for 21 years, and I've had so many cases, and I've had so many people who I've been able to help. It's funny because you sometimes the best days are when everybody walks out equally unhappy. You know, it just seems like if everybody's equally unhappy, then you've done a good job. And there are those days.
Mm-hmm. That's hard for sure. We have a friend going through a separation, divorce, and the wife is in a home that's far above her means, and it won't be within her means for a long time. Do you, in these kinds of cases, what would you recommend? Do you recommend that the husband's money becomes community property? Because that's what her attorney is advocating. And of course, our friend is the guy, so we're like, no, it's
Hmm.
this doesn't seem right. Have you ever come across that before, and how do you handle it?
Well, under Nevada law, everything's community property that was acquired during the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the length of their marriage would depend on what is considered community property and what is considered his separate property or her separate property. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if the house can't be afforded by one or both parties, then the house has to be sold,
Right.
and then they have to move on.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like there may be an issue of spousal support or alimony in your friend's case.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm sure that she's got a capable attorney who's doing a good job with that, and so does he to know how to defend that.
Sure. Well, luckily their kids are older, and it's the light is at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, good.
So just if I'm out there and I approach you and I say, why should I vote for you? What would you tell me?
You know what? There are there's a number of reasons. I am one of four candidates in Department Z, and I think it's important to let you know that there is a primary in June. And of course, this year, with the pandemic, things are going to be different. Everybody's going to get a mail-in ballot.
Mm,
So it's very, very important to get those ballots and get down to the bottom of all the judges, because there are 54 judges, I believe, on the ballot this year. And you need to be all the way down to the bottom of Z. So I need you to vote for Romeo Perez in Department Z. That's Department Z as in Perez.
that sounds great. At your.com?
It's Romeo, the number 4, judge.com. Be my website.
Thanks, Romeo.
Thank you.